Welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone. You can follow me at Will Stone CFB on Twitter. You can subscribe to this podcast, the Ineligibles podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Come on in, pull up a seat. It is a big weekend, big game ahead against the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge. A&M 7-0, ranked number 3 in the AP poll. I meant to get to that on here. Maybe I did a few weeks ago after the Florida win, when that same day Indiana took down Oregon. Ole Miss screwed around against Washington State. They would later lose to Georgia this past weekend. And A&M just kept winning games and almost by default just kept kind of climbing their way up the rankings. And then Indiana jumped A&M up to 3. So you had Ohio State 1, Miami 2, Indiana 3, and A&M was 4. You're thinking, okay, I mean, first of all, none of this even matters because all that matters is you win your games and you get into the SEC title game or the playoffs, and that would be a success to get to the playoffs. And what your AP poll ranking is week 7 or 8 does not matter. But you know, if you follow this team, you're probably thinking, man, like it's been a while since we've been up that high. And you'd be right. The last time we were ranked as high as 3, I've got to scroll all the way down, 1995. So I was 2 years old the last time we were ranked this high. Since then, the highest was 4th, which I believe they achieved that at the end of the season in 2020, which the AP poll had them 4th. They were left out of the playoffs, so they weren't really in the Final Four. But it's neither here nor there. What it doesn't matter, but it's pretty cool to see. Like it's not something that we've done in a long time. And you're thinking a few weeks ago, Ohio State, they're probably going to win out. They have no ranked teams left. I think maybe Michigan is kind of teetering on the edge of that top 25. Indiana, no ranked teams. Miami, I don't think any ranked teams, at least at that time. Then Miami loses last weekend, and uh, you know that I think it helps out for A&M's postseason prospects, just in terms of what could happen with the way the final rankings play out, with the top 12 and seeding and things like that for the playoffs. But that's a whole different topic. But I did want to pull up a tweet from our friend Robert Behrens from Good Bull Hunting at RCB05. These are firsts that A&M has achieved this season under Mike Elko. First ranked road win since 2014. First, what he didn't include was the first out of conference road game against a ranked team win, which was since like '79. Even though there's only been like 3 tries since then, but they broke that one as well. First 7-0 start since 1994. First AP poll top 3 since 1995. And then on the wish list for this week, first win in Death Valley since, guess when, 1994. And the first consecutive season, this one blows my mind. First consecutive seasons with a winning conference record since 2000. Since 2000. Back-to-back years with a winning conference record. That is, I mean, it shouldn't be real, but it is. And I think, I'll get off of this and get to the actual games here in a second, but this feels good to be, like we had some success last year, followed it up a little bit this year, and are doing well, having a really, really nice year. The way it could shake out with the remaining games, it could be really special. So, the stat that I always come back to is, A&M is usually ranked at some point during the season, like almost always. Like you look at the AP high, the highest they've reached in the past 25 years. since the year 2000. This year is 3, and then going back 10, 23, 6, 5, 4, 12, 16, nothing, 6, 9, 6, 6, 5, 7, 17, and then you get, that's back into the Mike Sherman era. Do you know how many seasons the Aggies have finished the season ranked in the top 25 in the last 25 years? 5 times. 5. 5 times. That's it. So we're all excited. I'm excited. I feel really good about this team. Things are in a good spot, but just remember that, I know we all want to get to the top, and this could be a special year where, maybe you could, make a run at that goal. But, I've said on here before that, well, this was pre James Franklin being fired and imploding at Penn State, but that's what A&M needed to get to take the next step. Like, hey, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, win 9 and 10 games, and then, do that and then get to the playoff, and then, start building towards it year after year. This year they could just kick the door down and just get into the playoff, and then, I don't really worry about seeing Elko's name associated with Penn State, or that's really the only one that's come up. But I said this back in August. If an A&M coach gets this team to the playoff, if Elko gets them to the playoff this year, money will flow into this program like it's 2012. That was just a 10-2 year. I guess it was 11-2 with the Cotton Bowl win, but beating number 1 Bama, winning the Heisman Trophy with Johnny Manziel, all that good stuff, and we would not have the Kyle Field we have today without that season. So if just doing that was enough to get people excited and get money to come into the program, which it's already, financially we're doing pretty well, but you mess around and get to the playoffs, get to the semis, get to the final. I mean, this place will have more support than ever, and I'm just not going to worry about a coach looking elsewhere, because I'm fairly certain that Mike Elko is not worried about that at all right now. What he's worried about is the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge this coming week. I'll spend most of the time talking about that game, but obviously we missed last week. We need to get into Arkansas, the good and the bad. There's a lot of bad on defense, a lot of good on offense, but I think, I'm not super worried about that result, at least as it pertains to the rest of the year. What matters is, and I think, I was thinking this that night. This was the first game this season that I wasn't able to watch the whole thing. I was at the F1 qualifiers with some folks, and service was spotty, so I got to catch most of the first half. I saw basically none of the fourth quarter, which, looking back, I'm kind of glad that I didn't, just because of how stressful it was, especially that fourth down run by E.J. Smith to convert that after getting hit in the backfield. Sorry, give me 1 second. Turn these notifications off. All right. So was not able to watch the whole thing, but while I'm sitting there following the score, and even with a 2-score, like 11-point lead there in the fourth quarter, in the second half, they keep scoring, and then we have to keep scoring. And what kept going through my mind was like, man, like, just get out of this with a win. Like, you can't lose this game. You're not playing your best. You're on the road. With the weather delay, this has turned into a night game. Supposed to kick at 2:30, kicks at 4:30, runs well into the night there at Fayetteville. Pretty decent turnout, and the field is a mess. You got this second coming of Cam Newton just running up and down the field on you. You can't catch him. You can't tackle him. This was a prime. And on a weekend, we talk about Miami. the weekend started Friday night. Miami going down to Louisville in a home game. Carson Beck, the number 2 team in the country, he throws 4 picks, and they lose to Louisville there in Miami. On Saturday, Texas Tech lost. Another big one that I'm missing. I should probably just have the poll pulled up at all times while I'm sitting here recording, but it was one of those days, like one of those weird days where, especially on the road, top teams were susceptible. LSU lost, even though they were an underdog. USC lost. Let me go back to week 8. LSU, Tennessee were 10-11. They both lost. Missouri, similar to A&M, they had to hang on to the last second against Auburn on the road. Texas going to overtime against Kentucky on the road. Memphis lost. Like they were supposed to be, one of the top teams for the playoff, and they go down. So, Ole Miss, going down to Georgia, like it was just like a lot of those teams were playing other good teams, but there were several teams like Missouri, Miami, Texas A&M, Texas Tech that were in some dicey situations and were able to, for A&M to be able to weather that storm and not succumb to the chaos, that's a big deal. And so that's going through my head. I'm like, man, just win, on a day when you didn't play your best in a, ultimate trap game spot, just win the game. And they did. This team has found ways to win games in any way you want it. Like if it needs to be a slugfest on defense, if it needs to be a shootout on the road. Both road games have been shootouts. Hopefully that ends this weekend. But when it's needed, this team, has picked each other up and played complementary football, and we cannot say the same for very many past A&M teams. You look at, we said this all year, but I think any team from the past, 10 years, maybe save 2020, but maybe not. That team's 5-2 right now. A lot of those teams are 4-3 at this point, with a loss to Notre Dame, Arkansas, and maybe one of the home games. So this team has a different DNA. They're battle tested. They're veteran. They're experienced, and they've whatever it is, whatever the it factor is that we talked when Elko got here about being patient, and it takes time to get the loser out of a team. Like this team lost a lot of games before Elko got here in the 3 seasons leading up to it. So that can't change in a day, but here we are a year and a half in, and it's changing, and this team has learned how to win, and they're doing it. And now, as the last time I was stressed, and I really wasn't, was against Mississippi State. But even going back to Notre Dame, like on that last drive, I just knew they were going to do it. Like I wasn't worried, about. And when it got down to 4th and 11, I was like, okay, now I'm getting pretty concerned that we've, I feel like we botched things and then put ourselves in that situation. But guess what? They got in the end zone when they absolutely had to have it. Last play of the game situation, they did it. And I just can't say enough about their their resilience and their mentality. Shout out to JT. Man, this dude is the number one fan of this podcast. Bought Wi-Fi on the plane for this. Welcome back, King. Good to be back. Appreciate that very much, JT. Glad to have you riding along with us. I saw your comment, your tweet the other day that you messaged me about how Petrino had kind of was scheming up against Cassius Howell, how they identified him, and you're absolutely right. And defensively, I think there's a lot of issues and things that this defense did at every level that they didn't really do through the last 4 games, last 5 games. Like some of this stuff was back from UTSA with like getting in the wrong gaps, and some of those big runs were due to that. But on the Cassius Howell thing, like a lot of folks don't like that we will drop Cassius into coverage sometimes when he's such a good pass rusher. Well, it works against teams like, Auburn and Mississippi State and Florida because you have to dial it up at the right minute, in the right, when you see a certain formation that the offense is in, then it's time to call that play. But I think Elko is really good at identifying like where the first read's going to be, and I think in that situation, they drop Cassius, they have an overload blitz from the other side. They're thinking, that the guy that Cassius is on is going to get because it's a slot receiver. It's really close to the line of scrimmage. It's not a tight end. So, like Cash, he can cover tight end pretty much all day. Slot receiver, no, it's not going to happen. So, in that situation, they're thinking, hey, Cash, if you can just get a hand on this guy and just redirect him and not just, let him run right behind you. Cash didn't touch him at all. Like on any of the attempts that this happened, it was at least 2, maybe 3. If he just redirects him, that receiver, a little bit, then Taylor Green's getting his head taken off because he was, a split second away each time on those blitzes. But didn't execute. Maybe should have scrapped it. I think in the broader topic, which this has been talked about and everyone kind of understands this, but there's no one else on this schedule, maybe even through the postseason, that is like this Arkansas offense. I mean, Taylor Green is, I think, 3rd in the country in QBR. He's just he's a freakazoid athlete. And especially, I don't want to blame everything on the wet field because our defense still did things that are uncharacteristic and should be cleaned up and can't happen again the rest of the year against some of the better teams. But I can't sit here and say that the weather just wasn't a factor because it was. Like I saw on 2 separate plays, I saw York slip and like ended up being nowhere close to being in position to make a tackle. I think it was on the running back. And then I saw Des Rick slip, trying to break on a football. And the guy gets a completion in like a big game. I'm like, that's really not on Ricks. Like that's really hard to do. Like the receiver knows like, hey, I'm taking 5 steps and then I'm cutting, back inside and getting the ball. Ricks is having to play defense. He's saying like he's manned up. If that guy, goes vertical, he's got to stick with him. If he breaks it off underneath, then he's got to, to get out back out of his break and break on the football. And it was a lot of slipping and sliding going on. I didn't think the defensive line did a good job of maintaining their gaps and that kind of thing. Sometimes we just didn't really know, or maybe whoever was supposed to have the running back went after the quarterback. And maybe that was Hal, maybe it was other players too. But there were too many times where, we thought like, hey, like I'm going to make the play. Like I've got to get there instead of, hey, I'm going to play my assignment and the defense will work the way it's supposed to. It was, I want to go be the playmaker. And that's not the way it works. And I'm sure Elko has given these guys an absolute earful. We all know that's his pride, is his defense. And it's tightened up a lot. They played really, really well the 3 weeks coming into this. But That was not good enough. I mean, he told you as much. He gave out no. There was no defensive player of the week for this team because no one played good enough in his own words. So yeah, but you flush it. You say, hey, that's not who we are. We're the team that played like that 3 game home stretch, and played sound football and didn't give up big plays and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, like I got a little bit off track, but there's no one else like Taylon Green on the schedule, and really, I mean, there's some mobile guys like Bo Perbula from Missouri. Like he's a mobile guy. Arch Manning's a mobile guy. He's an athlete. Lenore Sellers, obviously, but those last two, Manning and Sellers, especially Sellers, that offensive line, which that's going to bring us to LSU here in a minute. Watching that game from a few weeks ago, I have not seen worse offensive line play than I saw from South Carolina against LSU since Adazio was at A&M in I think of like the Miami game in 2023 or the Tennessee game in 2023 or Bama in 2022, when we just, are getting completely whipped. We have no idea what we're doing. We're letting guys run free to the quarterback. Like I felt so bad for Sellers having to play against LSU, and not even that LSU was that good, but their defense is very aggressive, and that South Carolina offensive line just had no clue what they were doing. I think they racked up, it was like altogether they had 44 pressures. That wasn't 44 different dropbacks like some guys got pressure on the same play, but 44 recorded pressures in that game, which is just astronomical for anyone against any team. And but yeah, so against is I know people will say, oh, they still have Lenore Sellers. We saw last year we couldn't tackle him, and he was he's so dynamic and strong and a good player. But at home behind that offensive line, I feel good about A&M's chances there. And like I'm bearing the lead here, but like the guy this weekend, Garrett Nussmeier, not mobile at all. I mean, if ever there was, a modern day, I feel like in the old SEC, like half the quarterbacks were statues. I think of like, Greg McElroy or AJ McCarron or, Aaron Murray, Zach Mettenberger, like those guys couldn't really move that well. But like now, like even, you know, there's not really any statue quarterbacks anymore. Like everyone's at least somewhat athletic and can get on the move and make plays. Nussmeier is the closest thing to a statue that I've seen in a while in the SEC. And to top it off, like he started the year hurt. I think 2 separate injuries. I think he's starting to feel better. I thought he played decent last week, at least throwing the ball in terms of his accuracy and things like that. But every time he got hit, and he got hit a lot because the O line's not very good. They, you can see him just like struggle to get back off the ground. Like he's got to have like somebody help him up, damn near after every shot he takes. So, but before I get into that real quick, the offense against Arkansas, we thought going in that A&M would do pretty well on offense against Arkansas. They have the worst defense in the league. They fired their as soon as Petrino got the interim job, he fired the whole defensive staff, and and I don't know if he brought in a new DC or if it's Chris Wilson, who's a good defensive coordinator, good defensive coach. He may have already been an analyst on staff, and he just got elevated to DC. Now against Tennessee, they played very, very soft coverage, and Tennessee just kind of diced them up, running and throwing. Against A&M, no, not at all. It was a complete 180. They were press man, selling out to stop the run in our grill, and they were like, if you're going to beat us, it's going to be Marcel throwing the football. And it wasn't just that the offense, it wasn't just like, hey, A&M offense and Marcel Reed and the O line and the receivers and the running backs. Hey, like you guys should score every possession or pretty close to it. It's actually that we need you to score every possession, or else we're going to lose the football game. Like it wasn't that they should have done it or that they could have done it. This team needed them to play that way, or we lose. And we're 6-1. We're probably out of the top 10, and things get really, really dicey looking at the rest of the schedule. But props to the offense and Colin Klein and Reed and these running backs and the tight, like everyone involved. Just a total, just complete effort on offense to win this game for A&M. I'll tell you right now, and it made me so happy to see this because I think this kid is a guy that has just, he's had to have worked so hard to put himself in this position and, fight through injuries in his career. And, when he got here, wasn't healthy, didn't look last year the way he looks this year. But E.J. Smith, we may look back and say, hey, that was one of the top 10 plays of the year, converting that fourth down. Because you might lose the game if you don't get it. You're only up by 3 or by 3 or 4, by 4. Maybe it was 3. Anyway, if he doesn't get that, if he doesn't convert that, they have the ball in our territory, and they're like, we couldn't stop them. We didn't stop them all day. Like they're scoring there. So, whatever the story is for A&M football this year, it can't be written without E.J. Smith. He's going to be a part of it. And I think he's earned that. And, I was so excited to see him, the way he played, the toughness. I think we need that without Moss. Ruben is a great back. Amari and Morrow can both do really nice things. I thought Amari had a really physical catch and run where he trucked a guy on the sideline. But E.J. Smith, I would expect to see a heavy dose of him going forward. Maybe even, 50-50 or like a, 50-40-10 split between those top 3 guys. But he's going to get some PT. And he's great in pass pro. They trust him to hold on to the football. I'm just really, really pumped for him and thrilled to see what he's doing out there. So, and then, I think Marcel Reed, probably his best game of his career, maybe, just in terms of decisions, throwing the football, had a 50-yard, 60-yard run wiped out that would have definitely, ended the game right then and there. That would have made it 52-35. Wiped out to a completely bogus and bullshit holding call. I'm pretty fed up with all the officiating in this conference. Don't get me started on the fine that was levied against A&M due to the fake injured player. It burns me up, and I haven't even looked into this too much, but like there was an official that's been here for years that got fired today. That's how damn bad they are. Like they're getting fired mid-season for being so terrible at their jobs. I don't want to get off topic, but man, like I'm sick of it, and I'm looking forward to more looking forward to playing in the postseason because it'll be a different crew. Like crews that aren't from this sorry officiating ass league, and maybe like other conferences know what they're doing because we do not. Anyway, don't let all that distract you from how well the A&M offense played, how well Marcel Reed played and threw the ball. Ashton Bethel-Roman, several big catches. We needed him, and he stepped up. We needed every play we made. We had to have it, or else things could have gotten real dicey, and you lose the game. So the offensive line's been tremendous. I don't know that we've won the Joe Moore Award. Maybe the group in 2012 did. Let's see. If you don't know, the Joe Moore Award is for the top offensive line in the country. Joe Moore. Sorry. Oh, this is great podcasting. Has Texas A&M ever won? I know they were top three. They were top three in 2020, which, I mean, it was Alabama that year, and that's probably the best offensive line in history. So I'm not too mad that we didn't win it. Sorry, this is gonna burn me up till I see it. Okay, here we go. Well, it's only been around for for 10 years. I didn't know that. So maybe they would have won it in 2012, but it started in 15 with Bama. Yeah, so we have not won. Check this out. Last year it was Army. Army won it in 2024. Love to see that. Michigan won it back to back in 21 and 22. Washington in 23. Several of those guys were in the pros. Bama 2020, LSU 2019. That those two speak for themselves with how good those teams were. Both, actually, three teams on here, or just out of those, won the championship, and then Washington played for it. So yeah, it's pretty important. And I don't have the numbers, but I can tell you right now, if you took the last three games for this O line and the pressures that they've given up, the pressure rate, just those three games, and you said, hey, that's what they did all season, that might break a record for how low it is. I mean, it's it's absolutely incredible what they've been doing. Just huge tip of the cap to those guys and to Adam Cushing, and and to all. I mean, there's seven guys that get snaps. You've seen Ruben Fothery come in and play a lot more. You've seen Mark Naboo move around. You've seen Coley get in there at center. Trey Zune at center. Mark Naboo at guard. A lot of moving pieces and moving parts, and it hasn't mattered who's in there. They're just kicking ass and taking names no matter who it is. So yeah, big tip of the cap. We'll take a little bit of a break, like 60 seconds, and then come back and talk about LSU because yeah, I've got some thoughts, and also want to get into what the media, national media is saying about this game because I find it pretty interesting. But we'll be back in 1 second. So one thing I like to do on these Wednesday shows is, lucky for me, I timed this up pretty well to where the initial the initial injury report will come out like an hour before I sit down to record. So I've got time to look at that and see how things are looking on the injury front. From the A&M side, just three names, and they're all listed as out. So there's no doubtful or probable. The only ones listed here are safety Bryce Anderson, running back Le'Veon Moss, and then freshman safety Rashad Johnson. You know, so Bryce came back against Florida and played. I think he was also out last week too, though. So I think Elko was asked about that. He's like, hey, he's kind of still working through some things and that kind of stuff. So he'll be out this weekend. But I think between Dalton Brooks and Marcus Ratcliffe, they've been holding up pretty well. So we can, hopefully Bryce can heal up quick and get back out there before too long. On the LSU side, this is the interesting part. Out for sure, or listed as out are defensive end Gabriel Relaford. He's out for the season. He got hurt a few weeks ago. And then offensive lineman Tyree Adams. So if you watch the Vanderbilt game, Tyree Adams is their starting left tackle who went down in that game with an injury, I believe, in the first half. Didn't come back. He is out this weekend against the Aggies. Doubtful is linebacker Whit Weeks, who also did not play against Vanderbilt. Questionable is Bernard Gooden, the defensive tackle for them. And then probable is a defensive end Jamari Butler. So out of these, three pretty big ones. We'll start with Tyree Adams being out. The LSU line is not good. We said that all summer when people tried to tell you that the top of this league was Texas, Georgia, Bama, and LSU. That was the top four, clear cut, no doubt about it. I pushed back against that. I did not believe that. And I'll even give you Texas, coming off two impressive seasons, and how they were playing, some guys they brought back on defense. I'm like, you know what? I'll give you that. Texas, Bama, Georgia, that's fine. LSU's not in that mix. They have not been very good under Brian Kelly. Last year was the year to do it with the NFL offensive line that they had and the supposed NFL quarterback. They couldn't do it last year. They couldn't run the ball at all last year. They damn sure can't this year. I listened to their fan base saying, oh, well, it can't get worse, right? Never, ever say that. Never, ever say as a fan of sports or football, it can't get worse. Yes, it can. There's no bottom to how bad it can get. Because I don't know how you expect to lose, 4 NFL guys on the offensive line, and then the next year you're going to run the ball better when you couldn't run it with those guys. And they have good backs. That I like Harlan Berry. I like Caden Durham a lot, but they just can't do it. But I'm digressing here. The O line is the issue, the biggest issue with them. And I think Adams was probably one of the best ones. And he's at the all important left tackle spot. And Garrett Nussmeier is not a very mobile guy. And I'll keep going to get the rest of these. Whit Weeks is a big deal, him not playing. I think he's overrated. That game against LSU last year where he just made a bunch of plays, against Ole Miss last year where he, made a bunch of plays. I think maybe had a fumble recovery or a pick or something, and had that crazy nickname that I can't repeat here. Was preseason All-American. I'm like, look, he's good, but I don't know if he's that good. And he's been good this year, but it is important. Like, he's very important for their defense. The backup, he's a fine player, but I think Weeks is he's the green dot. He's the captain. He makes the play calls, and gets the calls through the headset. So, he's a good player. So him being out it's a significant downgrade for them at that position. The other big one to me is Bernard Gooden. He's far and away their best defensive tackle. Not a big guy. He's probably in the 280s, but extremely quick. Can really get after the quarterback from the interior. Very dangerous player for them. Didn't play last week. Looks like he's questionable. I think he had like a bruised collarbone or something like that, or some kind of bone bruise. But if I had to guess, he's probably going to play. Maybe not 100%, but our O-line has been obviously lights out at protection, but Gooden is a guy to watch for, number 88 on their defense. We've got some bigger guys, and we need to be able to get out of our stance and engage with him before he gets going, because if you're slow, he's going to blow right by you and get to the quarterback. So definitely watch out for that. So I've said a lot about their offense, and I think that's the obvious part, but LSU's defense. Let me pull something up here. They've been heralded as one of the best in the country. I think they they definitely are improved from, definitely from the last few years, and even from last year that they're improved, and they're a good defense. Their secondary is very very good. They've got some NFL players on that back end, led by Mansour Delane. He's probably a first round pick at corner. Absolutely shut down, lockdown guy. If I'm calling Klein, I'm saying, hey, whoever he's covering, just don't throw over there, because you know A&M played against an elite corner earlier in the year in Leonard Moore at Notre Dame, and Marcel tried to test him one on one, and it got picked off. We don't have the big outside guy that can, like as good as our receivers are, their skill set is not to go up and out jump NFL corners and come down with jump balls down the sideline. Now, obviously, if you scheme it up and whoever he's covering, if you're wide open and you get him from a scheme standpoint, then by all means. But if it's a one-on-one and your guy's covered, just don't put it in harm's way, because he will make you pay. Here we are, LSU. So their defense, per Bill Connolly, who's a guy that I trust, their defense is sixth in the country. I don't disagree. That's a mathematical equation that looks at every play and waits for opponent and all that good stuff. That's great. They are good. They are a really good defense. However, I think they're good at holding teams out of the end zone. I think, you kind of saw that with Vanderbilt, where they would get down there and, have to kick a field goal. They traded sevens for threes. I would prefer if we didn't do that. um, and obviously they scored some as well. Like, they got in the end zone plenty, but it's 31-24. But here's a number that stands out on LSU's defense. Rushing success rate is in the 60s. It's like 65th. A&M's is 14th. On a per play basis, we are pretty good at shutting down opposing teams' run games. Now, where we've got in trouble, especially against Arkansas, if you notice, Arkansas had several runs for like 0 and 1 or 2 yards, or a loss. It was that, or it was an explosive. Like, there was no real middle ground with their run game, and like, obviously, don't even account for what Taylor Green did with his legs. But for most, like even against Notre Dame, like on most of the run plays that we face, we're successful. Like, we limit them to the yardage requirements for that metric. LSU, as good as they are, they're very downhill and very aggressive. They blitz a ton. Some exotic stuff, like they'll blitz the safeties, they'll blitz the corners. The linebackers just kind of, they fly downhill. Harold Perkins, he's not what people thought he might be when he was a true freshman. But he's made some good plays, especially spying quarterbacks. Although Diego Pavia kind of got the best of him last week. But they aren't just like the best up front. They're good, but I think the ends are good players, not all conference worthy. And I think defensive tackle is where they're especially vulnerable, especially if Gooden is out. Even with Gooden, he's not a huge guy, and I think A&M could move him off the ball. I would expect to see A&M have some decent success on the ground, and I think that LSU will play similar to how Arkansas did, to where, because they got way better secondary than Arkansas does. They're going to say, all right, we're going to play press man and get in your face, and and load the box and just trust our guys in one-on-one and make you beat us throwing the ball. So we're definitely going to see some of that, and Marcel will need to play well to win this game. But it wouldn't shock me if, much like some of those, like the game against Florida and Auburn and Mississippi State, wouldn't shock me at all to see A&M get the ball in the fourth quarter up by a touchdown and just run, 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 and run the clock out, just slowly chip away and chew up yardage and, cap it off with a touchdown, and you're up by 2 scores, and you just took off 8 minutes of clock, in the fourth quarter. So that's kind of been our recipe of what we have done in the late part of games. So, and I think we can do it, even without Le'Veon Moss. I think that just from a matchup standpoint, just like a talent like our O-line versus their D-line and linebackers, I would favor us in that matchup. And it's always interesting to see the coaching matchup because Colin Klein has now coached against Blake Baker's defense twice at 2 different spots. Before he came here and before he left for LSU, they faced off at Kansas State and Missouri, respectively. And Colin Klein put up like 28, 30 points on him then. Obviously, way different, personnel and teams and all that good stuff, but still interesting. And then obviously last year, they got the best of us in the first half, but then that led to, the biggest turning point or significant change in the program was since hiring Elko was changing quarterbacks. And that was the game where you said, okay, we got to go with Marcel. And you put him in the game, you scored whatever it was, 31 unanswered or 31 second half points, whatever it was. And then you never look back. And I don't think it's going to look like last year where we threw the ball twice in the second half. I don't think that at all. But yeah, I think in a more traditional way, this offense can really grind out some yards against LSU, and hit some big passing plays. And I think this is a game where you can turn Marcel loose a little bit, and you say, hey, if you need to run for the first down, do it, and don't wait, and still try to protect your body and don't take any shots unnecessarily. But you can get out there and freewheel a little bit and pick up some yards on the ground. So, also meant to mention earlier, for the first time, it felt like Marcel really just truly took what was there, and he hit the check down more than I've ever seen him do. And it was incredibly efficient. And if he had done it even one more time, down there in the end zone, he has, I believe Theo, or it's one of the tight ends, just wide open across the middle. And he, I like the gunslinger mentality. He tries to get it to the end zone and give his guy a shot. I'm pretty sure he, is a good route and a good throw. The DB broke it up, there at the end. But if you do check it down, you might score on that play. You'd easily get a first down, and you probably punch it in after that. But Theo may have gotten there, from where he was on the field already. So, yeah, I think that's the Marcel we need to see. And I think, I mentioned earlier listening to other shows nationally and hearing what they think, and trying to get, views from outside of A&M, objective views, and they're all like, look, unless Marcel or A&M just turns the ball over a ton, I don't really see a path for LSU to score enough to win this game. And look, this is a crazy sport. I'll tell you right now, I expect to win. I don't expect it to be easy, and we could definitely lose. I mean, they're a talented team. We are playing in one of the toughest environments that there is in football. Even though their fan base is in a very precarious spot, and some of them are actively rooting against their own team. so they can see Brian Kelly fired, which I don't think will happen with his buyout situation. But even still, it will be a tough matchup, and a tough game to win. But it's you know, I think I would agree, unless it's just one of those off nights where you know the offense is out of sorts and they're putting the ball on the ground, or Marcel's just putting the ball in harm's way, which he hasn't really shown a tendency to do. I don't know how LSU moves the ball enough to really to beat A&M, which sounds wild, but like I'll kind of cap it off, going back to their offense against our defense. I watched pretty much the whole game against Vanderbilt, and the O-line wasn't even that bad, and Nussmeier made some good throws in that game, and they hit some explosives. Like, most of their points came off of big like chunk plays, or at least to get them down there. And they ran the ball like probably better than they have in a lot of their games. But A&M is a more talented defense than Vanderbilt is. Like, I'm sorry. I respect Vanderbilt. They're a really good team. They could make the playoff this year. They very well could. Watching their personnel than watching us, we have a better defense. Our corners and secondary can run with those receivers. This is not the best LSU receiving group that they've had. It's far from it. It's good. It's adequate. It's not special. Trades Green, he's a problem. The tight end, probably the best pass catcher they got is the way he's been playing, especially the past 2 weeks. But like, they ran the ball some on Vanderbilt. They won't do that against A&M. I'm sorry. It's just unless they completely flip from what they've been the past 18 months, I don't know how that happens. So yeah, that's and Nussmeier, like, we saw him against an Elko defense last year, and I get it's on the road, and I don't think he's really been like super turnover prone this year. But I mean, he threw 3 picks in a half against, and he's still got that. I am not going to throw this ball away. I will throw. I'm throwing it to somebody. It's getting in the air, and it's either going to one of my guys or going to the other team. So, he's still got some of that in there. And actually, let me just look it up while I'm on here, because I'd hate to lie to you guys. So he's got 5. He's got 5 on the year. He did have 2 against South Carolina, where I think both were in the red zone. So it was just a 20-10 win. They probably could have won by more without those turnovers. He had 1 against Florida, 1 against Ole Miss, 1 against La Tech. So it's not awful, but it's not it's not the best. His net rushing yards on the year is 0. Had negative 13 last week against Vanderbilt. So, just across their offensive line, I think the center and right guard are decent players. The right tackle, the guy who's now the left tackle, the left guard, it's not it. And I feel good about this game, and I think, to bring this all back and to look big picture, this is a very important game to win. I think winning this, like, people are finally starting to buy in on A&M. Not all the way, because you still have people in this conference that cover this conference that have A&M as the 4th best team in the conference. They say, "Oh, I've got Bama, Georgia, and Vanderbilt ahead of A&M," and that's fine. You can have whatever opinion you want to, but going to that place this weekend and winning that game against that team, I don't care what their record is or how good they are, what the perspective of them is, the perception of them. But for A&M to go and do that, that makes the whole country say, okay, that team's legit. They're probably going to the playoff. So yeah, go do it. And the way this team has played and what they've done so far, I have no reason to think that they won't go out and get it done. So, if I'm being honest, and I always am with you guys, I think this is a, you know, 2-score win for A&M. 10, 11, 13, 14, somewhere in there. Yeah, that's where I'm at. So, quickly, before we get out of here, just to recap kind of, I think I'll stick with the other 2 road games on this schedule because I think we're all, you know, we're paying attention across the country, what's going on. But I think we're all focused on what matters for this team. And right now that's LSU, Missouri, and Texas. Missouri they they almost got. And man, I'll tell you what, I think Auburn might be cursed. I really do. I think they sold their soul for 2010 and 2013, even though they didn't win the whole thing in 2013, just the season that they had. Because watch them against Missouri and tell me they're not cursed. Like they started out 0-3 in conference play. They had to win this game to not go 0-4 in SEC play. It's a home game. It's a home night game at Jordan-Hare against a good team, a ranked Missouri team, good Missouri team. But Auburn could have beat them, and I feel like they outplayed them. They got into the red zone a couple times. They missed a field goal. Like they hit one off the upright early in that game. That would have been, they could have won it had they made that, and they couldn't get it done. They dropped a pass, maybe overtime. I think late in the fourth quarter, Arnold made a good pass finally. Got the tight end, just dropped it, and just a dozen other things happened. You're like, man, it's just not meant to be for this team, at least not this year. And we've seen, gosh, we haven't even talked about all the coaches that have been fired already. Yes, yeah. The commenter says the 17-0, which should have been against Georgia 17-0, ended up being, they lost 20-10 after the officials kind of, played a factor. But to make it about Missouri and to get to their end of this, I think you've seen them. They scored in regulation, 17 or 30. Like it was a very low scoring game. So I think their offense has come back down to earth a little bit. I think defensively, I think they're good, but they're probably closer to Auburn. They're kind of in that tier. I think, LSU and Texas are probably in an upper tier in terms of defense, and I think Missouri, Auburn, those kind of teams are a little bit below that. So I feel good about that game. A few weeks ago, I was like, man, I think that worries me the most. But to be honest, maybe LSU worries me the most just because of where it is. If you watch Texas, there's so much wrong with Kentucky losing that game. The Texas offense was non-existent. Damn near all their points came from punt returns and field position from punt returns. Without that, they lose by 2 scores to Kentucky. I would keep a close eye on them this weekend in Starkville against Mississippi State because that team can actually score, even without Fluff Bothwell, which I think he's probable for that game. We'll see. And look, that's a rival. That's a talented Texas team, especially on defense. But as I'm sitting here today, if they played this weekend, I would pick A&M, and I'd feel good about it. And uh, I would say that for any team left on the schedule. And man, I think it's okay for us to talk about that. I know we're all we're all superstitious and beaten down and knock on wood and all that good stuff. And we don't want to believe because we've been burned so much. But I think I think people are really, this fan base is really buying in on this team with what they've done. You go win this weekend, and man, that will, I think that will seal it for me on my belief in this team. So, and then we talk about playoffs, but like getting to the SEC title game, we've never done that. We've only kind of like barely sniffed it, like only been in like kind of in the mix a time or two. And even then, like we weren't that close. Like I mean, honestly, the closest was probably last year, and you know, you let it go and let it slip away from you. But to accomplish that and get to Atlanta, and then probably play Alabama, a team that you're pretty familiar with from the. I mean, didn't play him last year with Elko as the head coach, but he's coached against that team, even though it's it's not Nick Saban, it's a different cast of characters, but a familiar uniform, and I think that would be a great scene and great for this program just to get there, and I'd take us against Bama, absolutely. It's definitely a game they can win, and then after that, like there's I'll leave playoff talk for a future day, but you start looking at the field and it gets pretty interesting, and it's like some of these matchups. I'd love to see A&M play Oregon in one of these big like that'd be so freaking cool. Like we've not played them, I don't know, ever. I mean, not in the modern era, or not since I've been following. So Oregon or what if if Texas Tech finds their way in, or Georgia, Georgia gets matched in your in your side of the bracket. That's a team you don't play very often. It's it's going to be so much. I think this it's been a great season. I think there's a lot to look forward to. I'm pumped for this game, and I'm out of stuff to talk about, so I'm going to get off of here. But if you're going to the game, God bless you. Good luck. And I do want to shout out. I hope he's still listening. Ronnie Barker, a fan from Tokyo, Gig'em. I love that. Appreciate your listenership. Appreciate all you guys. Thank you all so much. My ticker up here says there's 9 of y'all right now on you, or there's 8 on YouTube, 1 on Facebook. Appreciate you very much. And Asian Persuasion says it best here in the chat. If they beat LSU and Missouri, good chance we go 12-0, which would be insane. That would be insane because I have said all offseason that we won't see an undefeated SEC team again. And if A&M does that, then how freaking cool is that? That's what we're all striving for, right? We've all been in the thick of it, and in the trenches with this team. We've all been through a lot together, and it's been fun so far. So let's keep it up. Let's keep it going. Go into Death Valley and get you another first, and exercise another demon, from your past where you can't go over there and win a game. So, if you can't do it now, like why not now? Like now's your time. Go get it done. I trust Elko. I trust these boys, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So. We'll be watching. I'll be locked in. I'll be back here next Wednesday to break it all down for you. Thank you guys so much, and beat the hell out of LSU.